Hey, one thing I want to add to the foundations class is because it's one of my first classes that I'll be teaching, we decided to do a discount. So, fire sale, no. Uh, it is usually $240 and we're going to cut it $100, so it'll now be 140. Yes, yes. And on Zoom. So, if you plan on being on Zoom, it's going to be interesting for me too, because I've always done it in person, and I'm now gearing it to where I have a lot of moving parts in my foundations class. And so I'll be downloading a file to the Zoomers, and we're going to get that all done tomorrow, hopefully. But it's going to be fun. So come on in. Yeah, so it's this Wednesday, and we'll be doing it at the, huh? Yes, real quick. Yes. Yeah, it does. It is. Every class you take, whether it's a repeat, is always a different adjustment because you are in a different place. So where you come in and where you leave, it's always very interesting. And I love it because you will not be the same person that you came into the foundations class when you leave. So just that's a word of warning. So, all right. This morning, my talk is, do you have the faith of God or in God? And there is a difference between those two little words, of and in. And so when we have faith in God, we know it exists, kind of like the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. We somehow know that when we wake up in the morning, there's going to be presents under the tree or there's going to be a dollar under our pillow. I think what's the going rate these days? Yeah, about $20? Okay, see, I'm way off. Okay, so because we believe that that's going to happen, it will. And I can remember as a little girl when I found out there was no Easter bunny. And I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I don't think I'm going to believe in the Easter bunny. I understand there's no Easter bunny. And she looked at me very sweetly and she says, Well, honey, I'm really sad about that. And I said, Why? She says, Because then if you don't believe in the Easter bunny doesn't believe in you. And basically, what I learned over time is she didn't want the magic to go away with all of that, the childhood belief systems that we have. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And another thing about having, the faith in God is we have this. I'm sure some of you have used this phrase. I believe in the man upstairs. Well, I grew up in a single family home, one level. I was always wondering, where's the upstairs? Is there a staircase I'm missing somewhere? Because we are always referring to the man upstairs. Well, of course, we're referring to God in heaven. And I thought, oh, well, that's an interesting. God, okay, upstairs. And then I realized also, as I was growing up and learning, is that, that painting of the Sistine Chapel where God is reaching out to Adam and Adam could be like, okay, whatever. It's that perception of God in the guy in the sky. He's the man upstairs. He's the God up beyond us in heaven. And I thought, isn't that an interesting way how we create language to connect to something that we can't really see. So the man upstairs. All right, the man's upstairs. Whatever he's doing, but in my tradition or in my faith, I call it what it is, and I know that it's not upstairs or in heaven. Heaven is within me, and that's what we teach in Science of Mind. More to come. So, faith of, okay, this is the good part because it's all an inside job. Faith of Of is an inside job. It is when we are embodying the Christ consciousness. Of is meaning that you live, breathe, and have your being within you. There's nothing outside. It's always what's in. It relies on the heart and the head. And most of the time, unfortunately, we do lead with our head, but it is always heart centered. My religion is love, as we know. So, what it means is that we are one, that one life, which is God's life, is our life, is that creative life, which we know to be as God. And without a doubt, we know it to be so. And so it is. That's why we say, and so it is. And so it is a declaration that without a doubt, it is. It can be no other. It has to be that way. It's so it is. I always like to add amen. But, and so it is. So what we're saying is that we have faith of God within us, right here, right now, knowing that that creative particle of us is in action. It is already being. It is already forward in action. It is done. It is done. So, and so it is. That's all it is. So what do the two have in common? Of and in. A lot about trust. That wonderful word that we sometimes like to avoid, or sometimes we have trouble with. We trust that that God particle within us, or if you're thinking without us, it's always there. You know, I have a question, and maybe it's something we can all think about. And I've been thinking about it for a long time. So I have a few atheist friends, and I always ask them, I said, so you don't believe in there's a creative power of all there is? No, can't be. And I said, okay, so let me get this straight. You have to believe that something doesn't exist for it not to exist. Right? So there's a belief that there has to be a God or an entity or co-creator, whatever you want to call it, but yet you're denying that it doesn't exist. Okay, I can understand that. But again, you have to believe that it exists to deny it. And I thought, So of God, when we're going of God, we're going a little deeper. And that's what I'm going to take you down a rabbit hole today in. It is going to be the inner consciousness of the God presence. You know, in the Bible, it's always referred to as the kingdom. Well, if you want to get rid of that word kingdom, just look at the word presence, presence of God. Jesus established the kingdom because he had to have a reference. And of course, we were still, you know, that heaven thing with the pearly gates and the castle and the fluffy clouds. But actually, it's the inner presence. So bring it on down. Bring it on down to ground level. Bring it on down into your heart and into your body. So it is that consciousness, that spiritual awakening. We look at, you know, between our heart and our head. I can remember when I was going through practitioner classes, I had this kind of an interesting journey. Because I was so academically trained, I tend to put God as an academic. And I had the hardest time getting God from here to here. Yeah, it takes a long time. And when I finally did, well, floodgates opened, all that stuff happened. But I went from my head to my heart. And during that practitioner time of seeking and uncovering and all that messy, wonderful stuff that we go through, and even in classes, you don't have to be a practitioner. It's what these classes do for us, is they create a path of looking at ourselves and that Christ consciousness, that God relationship. And we say sometimes in Science of Mind it can be very messy because it's very, and what we mean by that is it is very emotional. Because we find that connection. We find that connection to our higher power. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I'm part of all of this. I'm part of the keyboard. I'm part of the chair. I'm part of all of you. Because we're all part of this whole beautiful universe. We are all made up of little pixels, if you want to put it in that language, that creates what we have right here, right now. And then it comes together and creates what we are experiencing. You know, we have a lot of, let's see, how do I put it? We look at things when we're on a journey of the heart, oftentimes outside of ourselves. And I can give you proof by the million zillion books about self-help that are in the bookstores, library, on Amazon, wherever you want to look. So we're always looking outside of ourselves because we want to try to get that inner peace. Well, as wonderful as that is, it's still here. What we really understand is that the heart is wanting to be heard. You know, in the 80s, we had this thing about princesses, princes, palaces, and parking places. And we were all caught up in the material world. It was all about, okay, I've got this great concept called the science of mind or unity or divine science or whatever you want to call it, and I've got this great formula to get whatever I want. Okay, so how does that work for you spiritually? You can have all this material world stuff, but when you've got it, unbagged it, put it on the shelf and looked at it and it's collected dust for a while, what does that work for you? We don't put God on a shelf. We put God in our heart. Again, when we have that faith of that God presence, or as Christ we call it with the Christ consciousness, it's right here, right now. You know, Jesus gave us, and I realize that as we are in Lent right now, so I'm going to be a little Jesus right now. And what I loved about him is all of the parables and the different stories that he told. Plus, the New Testament is pretty an interesting little book, of several books actually. So Jesus used this wonderful parable called the mustard seed. And he said, "For truly I say to you, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible to you. If all things are to become possible, there must be an expansion of growth in faith." The Gospel of Luke also goes on to where the disciples came to Jesus and said, there's this little boy that's having epileptic seizures, and we can't heal him. We've done everything that you've taught us. Why can't we heal him? And Jesus, being the man that he was, he could have said, well, here, let me fix it for you. But he said no. He said, you don't have the faith of a mustard seed. And we look at that little itty bitty seed and we go, well, what is it about the seed? Well, if you plant that little seed, it comes into a big tree. Thoughts are things. So why didn't Jesus do it for them? Well, he knew that the reason why that they weren't getting any success with what was happening is because in their minds they did not see this child healed. They didn't have the conviction. They didn't see it. All they felt like they could do was, okay, you're healed. It's not that easy. Not only do you have to know that that person is healed, but that person also has to know they're healed. So what happens is you meet each other in the middle where the heart is. You meet each other. So each other knows that you're healed. And with that conviction, it happens. So Jesus kind of let them out in the wind and said, well, we'll figure it out, huh? So Ernest Holmes said this on page 265 in The Science of Mind. He says, faith is a faculty of the mind, that it finds its highest expression in the religious attitude, but always the human who has the faith in their own ability accomplishes far more than the one who has no confidence in himself. Those who have great faith have great power. And that's what Yahweh had, what Jesus had. He had Yahweh and himself, God. And so he knew he had that great power to see that child healed. He could see it healed. But the disciples, were so bought into their self-help, they thought, oh, anything can be done. No. It takes time. It takes work. And so for those of us that we think, all right, I'm just going to take a class or two and everything's going to be great and I've got this and I know what I'm doing. No, you don't. I'm going to be very honest. When we say or we ask you about spiritual practices, that is part of the spiritual practice, is to create that path to where you understand and you know that the power of your mind, the power of what you are seeing or doing is also creating something good in the world. It's a lot about ego, edging God out. That's why Jesus also withheld, is he knew that what was going on was all about the ego, that they weren't really concentrating on what was happening with that child. They just wanted to say, I healed somebody. And that's not what it was about. He was the teacher. He was a rabbi. And he was there to teach the power and the presence of the God that is within each one of us. All appearances in our world are constantly changing. And with health and wealth and all that wonderful stuff, we live in a constantly changing universe. Reality is that which is true in principle and not what we want to be true. So what happens is we are taught in our lives a lot of false claims. I'll go back to the Easter Bunny. We are taught as children there is an Easter Bunny. He brings eggs, chocolate bunnies, toys, whatever, kind of like a long-eared Santa Claus, or however you grew up with the Easter Bunny. And actually, it's a myth. It goes back to ancient pagan times, and it goes into more. But yet we've brought it forward in colored eggs and all that other stuff. And we've connected it to also, Jesus the Christ. So what Christianity, and that's where the Easter season is right now, is that Christianity has taught us, some of us, that we are all what they call sinners. I like to use mistake makers, because we are all mistake makers. I mean, I don't know about you, but I make several a day. And of course, we have that Old Testament God that punishes the mistake makers. No. We do not have a punishing God. We punish ourselves enough. And of course, when we look at what we fail at, look at the word fail. First attempt in learning. That's what fail is. First attempt in learning. I've had a lot of failures, and it is always been my first attempt in learning. And then I learn and I say, okay, I can do this now. And just so you know, I'm a visual person. I don't do well with directions. Those directions, usually when I have to put something together, they go in the box, they stay there, and I stumble through and figure it out. Isn't that what we do in life? We kind of put the directions away. We say, I can do this. I don't need directions. I don't need to listen to anything or any one particular thing. I can do this all by myself. And so in the Hebrew Bible, it says, defines faith as substance of things hoped for and evidence of things not seen. So when we think we're acting alone, we're hoping a lot. We're not knowing. We're hoping. We're hoping in this outer world that we will see things good for ourselves. How many of us have looked for signs? Things to let us know that things are going to be okay. We look at the stars. We can look at cards. We can look in our head. Oh my gosh, the anxiety we can cause in our head for that. We can look at our hands and our body and other things. We can look to the outside world. Why? When it's all in. We're all in. Why are we looking on the outside of ourselves when we should be listening to our heart? You know, Jesus made a statement. He says, according to your faith, it will be done unto you. Metaphysically, we just say very easily, what you put out, you get back. Isn't that easier? So what you're putting out, you're getting back. Think about it. What are you putting into the world that you want to experience? You're laying the groundwork. You're saying, this is what I want to experience. Instead of saying, you know what? No, I want a good day today. Let's see what I can do today with God. And so we go within and we say, you know what? I know that there's possibilities. I know that this is what I am seeing in my life happening. I know that all of this is going away. I know that if I have financial problems or health issues, that I can meet it with this wonderful Christ consciousness, knowing that my body is healthy, my bank account is healthy, however you want to phrase it. You just know that all of that and so much more is good. We have the ability to perceive a better life. So why aren't we? When you have the faith of God, God already knows you can. But if you have faith in God, well then again, it's outside. Bring it in. I have a question just to think about. If you could accept the possibility that one day you could become another Jesus, Muhammad, Moses, Buddha, or Arjuna, and that was from Hindu, what would it look like? Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and wear flip-flops and a long garment. All right? You don't have to do that. That's not what I'm asking you. What I'm asking you is, what would it feel like to embody the power and the presence of love, knowing and accepting without a doubt and conviction that whatever you decide to put your mind to is already done. It's going to happen. As I sometimes tell my husband, ye of little faith. Because sometimes he will get on that train of, it's not going to he'll get on the Eeyore syndrome. It's not going to happen. It's not going to. And I just sit there and go, yeah. And I have to do the work for both of us. But it is. Would you rather live with Eeyore? Or would you rather live in a universe where you say, this and so much more is available to me. I know without a doubt. You know, these people, these prophets, were way showers. They weren't just people that we read about for stories. No, what they are is they're examples of or examples of how to live in that sacredness, in that co-creative essence. And this all was not created just for us to have something to read. No, it was actually for us to know and do and to create something better. You know, these way showers also had another gift, that what they wanted to show us was the truth. They wanted us to know the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help us God. The truth will set us free. The truth is what also is paired with that relationship of that conviction and God. Now, I haven't forgotten about love. Love is a huge part of our journey. When we come from a space of love, then we also come from a space of forgiveness. You know, it's funny, my husband and I were having lunch yesterday, and we were talking about certain things that have been in our lives, and he said to me, he says, he says, I often wonder how you can deal with things. You deal with things so easily. It doesn't seem to bother you. And I said, yes, it bothers me. But what I look at is the truth of what's really going on, say with another person. If I have a conflict with somebody, I just know that, well, sometimes it's not about me. It's about that person. And I just happen to be the mirror reflecting back. So what is mine to do for that person is just to stand in love and say, okay, yeah, what you're doing is not very nice, but you know what? I can get over it. I can move on. But at the same time, I'm also knowing that that person is really wanting love in that life of theirs. And that's part of it. That's part of our beingness. That's part of our Christ consciousness. As we know, the Christ, he went into the leper colony and everybody went, are you kidding me? But he went in there and he goes, no big deal. And he loved those people. He saw them whole. So when we act in that Christ consciousness as well, we are acting in wholeness. We're saying that person is whole, no matter what is appearing. And yeah, maybe they make our life a little difficult, but we also know that we can get over it. We can get through it. Might be a little bumpy. And then again, there's that question that I ask of myself. What am I supposed to know? What am I supposed to know from this? What is it that is coming up that this person has come forward and stirred up the pot that I need to know? And I just say, well, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for all that is and all that is will be. But because I have that faith of God, I know that love is at the center of all that it is, no matter how crazy life can be. You know, it's interesting when we have this relationship with God, or whatever you want to call it, of your understanding. The main thing is that we forget to listen. And when we forget to listen, we often forget that it's working for us, not against us. Sometimes when things are for us, we look at, well, we have to defend ourselves. I'm right. I'm supposed to be doing this. This is where I'm supposed to be. And God goes, no, you're supposed to be here, not there. But no, I want to be here. I just went through that. About a year ago, I decided that I wanted to be a certain place because my brother was there. He was living in Prescott, and I did everything in my power to try to get there, and God kept saying, no, you're not supposed to be here. Yes, I am. No, you're not. And the doors were closing, slamming, nailed shut. Bars across. I mean, I was not supposed to be there. I was not supposed to be in Prescott or Prescott Valley or wherever. I was not supposed to be in that part of the country. And it broke my heart because I just lost my other brother. And I wanted to be so close to him. And God said, no, your work is somewhere else. And I'm like, whatever. Yeah, I give up. Exactly. I give up. It's like, whatever. You're supposed to tell me what to do? Well, I wasn't listening. I was so much in my ego self that I wasn't listening to my heart. And even though I was hearing and I was seeing and things were going on, I was like, no, la, 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 la. That's what I was doing. Because of my ego, I was edging God out. I wasn't allowing God to work through me as me. And when I finally said, okay, I'm done, I surrender. OMG. The world opened in so many ways. So many ways. And when we open up our hearts and we're allowed to turn our minds off, God is in action. And God performs amazing things and lets us in on it. You know, when we want to stay somewhere, it's kind of like being in elementary school and not wanting to go to junior high or high school. We're just like, no, I'm good on the playground. I'm really good on the playground. In fact, I like the playground. Yeah, those monkey bars, yeah, those are good. I like hanging on those. And God says, no, I have something better. I have something that will feed you. You know, when our faith is increased, our outer lives change and new relationships are established. There's new work. There's creative experiences. Oh my gosh, the stuff that is revealed when we get out of our way. It is amazing. When faith opens our minds and we say, okay, I refuse to be a victim anymore. I'm not a victim anymore. What is this victim stuff? I don't need to be that. Mountains of problems all of a sudden start to dissolve and we find the answers. All of a sudden we become the town jailer and we find all the keys to open all the locks to the cages that we've locked ourselves in multiple times. It's amazing how our problems get solved. So when we have the faith in God, we are merely believing everything happens outside of us. When we have the faith of God, we understand we are creating the experience and knowing without a doubt it is true. And all of this and so much more, we place our trust. Trust is the big word, that it is happening now. So what's the real story behind the mustard seed parable? It is telling us that great things can be accomplished with just a little spiritual insight. And that insight comes simply through a willingness to listen and to let our mind open up through faith and trust. And the other thing is, all things are possible with God. And so it is. And so let us turn within. And as we turn within to that beautiful presence of love, that beautiful expansive presence of love that is working through us as God, our God of our understanding, knowing that as we know whatever it is that we need to know, it is already done in the mind of God, which is our mind. Because right now we possess the faith of God. We are that God particle. We are that particle of everything that is created in the universe. And we create amazing things as this power and this presence. We create our health and our wealth and whatever it is that we're supposed to know. Beautiful friendships, community, whatever it is. I am so grateful for the opportunity that we do all have to have this open invitation of this God presence, this Christ consciousness that we live and move and have our being in. So grateful am I for this beautiful community of Tucson. Not only this beautiful spiritual community, but this beautiful city. And as we're living and growing and being. We know as a spiritual community that we are touching hearts, that we continue to expand and draw in. And I'm so grateful that each one of us is a part of that. And even those that have not been here yet, I know that for them as well. I know that all is opening, all is good, and all is God. And for this and so much more, I am so grateful. So grateful. As we move forward in God today in love, I know it to be so. And so it is. Amen.